The last thing we talked about was about a bechor. So a bechor, you can't. We said you can't treat it. You can't degrade it by selling it regularly on the market and weighing it and making more money off of it. That's degrading to the sanctity of the bechor. We wanted to know, what if that money is going to go to the upkeep of the temple? So we ended up, and it was a little bit unclear. We ended up yesterday that tried to bring a proof from our Mishnah. We have a bunch of animals, holy animals, sacrificial animals, got mixed with the bechor or meiser, either the firstborn or the 10th animal. Let's just go with bechor for a second. So what do? So basically, you say all the animals that are sanctified. You're going to redeem them, not the bechor. Bechor you can't redeem, but you're going to redeem them onto a coin, and now you're left with a bunch of animals that are mundane, but each one might be a bechor, and yet the Mishnah says, let them graze, and you could eat them. You could check them and eat them if they get a wound. Why don't you just sell them and donate them the money to the temple? So, you see, you can't do that. So the last thing we had was the Gemara said that it's a big difference because in the case of the Mishnah, it's two different animals. So who says you can take one sanctity of one animal and degrade it for the sake of another animal? You're going to take the sanctity of a bechor, because everything might be a bechor, and then you're going to degrade it by selling it regularly for the upkeep of the temple. Our case that we're asking is one animal. One animal, maybe that's not the same. It'll be a little bit more lenient. Therefore, you can't bring a proof. Fine. So Rav Huna, Rav Chizkiya, Talmidei de Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Huna and Rav Chizkiya were students of Rav Yirmiyah. Amri, they said, so this was said yesterday. Amri, mi dami, hasam shtei kedushos u'shnei guf, and hasam shtei kedushos v'guf echad. In the Mishnah, it's two different animals. Here, it's one animal. So who said you can degrade one animal for the sake of another animal? But our case is one animal, just one bechor that gets a wound. Can you sell it and give that money to the temple? Yes or no? No proof from the Mishnah. Fine. Now says the Gemara, Maskef lo Rabbi Yossi bar Oven. I don't understand the whole premise of your question. Ma ilu amar hiftuli bechor. Let's say you say I want to redeem a bechor in order that the sheitvisu lebedek habayis klum shomen lo. You want the firstborn to be redeemed and donated to the upkeep of the temple, and what would they do with it? They'd be able to shear its wool, and they get more money off of it. Not just it's an animal, but you can take the wool now, and you could. So can you do that? Of course not. The Torah says you cannot redeem a bechor. So just because, even if you want to use it for the upkeep of the temple, it doesn't matter. That the Gemara says there's a big difference. Hiftu Rachmana Amar Lo Sifta. The Torah says you can't redeem. We're asking about weighing it and selling it on the market. That Rashi explains only a rabbinic prohibition. So you can't bring me a proof because the Torah says you can't redeem it. I'm asking by a rabbinical case, can I sell the bechor when it gets the blemish, sell it regularly on the market in order to make more money, and now use that money for the upkeep of the temple? So that rabbinic prohibition, that they waive it in the face of getting more money for the temple, yes or no? The fact that the Torah says you can't redeem it is not a proof to me. So Ella Am Rabbi Ami, Klo mehiknezeh Ella ma shekanu lo. Rabbi Ami says, hold on, what did this person get? This Kohen, he only got a certain level of sanctity. He never got the ability to shear the animal, because shearing a bechor is prohibited. So what do you want to say? You want to say he should be able to give it to the temple and give them more than what he had? He himself only had the ability to slaughter and eat the animal. He never had the ability to give over its to shear its wool. So too, because what you got was limited, you cannot go now and sell it and then use the money for the temple, because you're going to end up giving the temple much more than what you originally gained, and therefore that's not going to work. Yeah. Yeah. Since he was never able to sell the animal in the marketplace, then he cannot donate that. He cannot go and do that for the upkeep of the temple. You only can do what you're able to. So, okay. Fine. So no, you cannot sell the bechor when it gets a wound and donate the money to the temple. You never had that ability. You only got it for itself, not for anything, not for any extra money, any extra shearings, nothing. Okay. We said in the Mishnah, Hakol Yicholin Lis'ari. So all the animals that are mixed together, and then at the very end of the Mishnah, it said, except for it said all the animals that are mixed together, so you have to let them graze, except for a chatas and a asham. If a sin offering and a guilt offering got mixed together, so then the rule of the Mishnah wouldn't apply, that you can let them graze. Says the Gemara, why not? Ma'ishna chatas v'asham. Why? Because the hay zakar hay nekeva, they're very easily identifiable. The chatas is a female and the asham is a male. So when they're mixed together, you can identify them. There's no need to be like, oh, I don't know which is which, and let them all graze. You know, this is a male, this is a female. So the females are chatas, the males are ashams. So if they get mixed together, you have to just figure out which is which and separate them. So says but Ola Nami. 1 second, and Ola is also a female, and Ola is also a female. So why only a chatas and an asham? If it's Ola is a male. So why only a chatas and a asham? Even a chatas and an Ola. A chatas is a female and Ola is a male. So the Mishnah seems to imply that if an Ola and a chatas get mixed together, you would let them graze like the rest of the cases. Says Amar, yeah, because Ika Seir Nasi, the he-goat of the leader of the Jewish people that ended up making a mistake and ruled erroneously, there you bring a Seir Nasi, you bring a he-goat, and 1 second. Ika Seir Nasi, and therefore what? The Seir is a chatos. Meaning the Seir, this kind of chatos offering, if that was mixed with an Ola, so then it'd be two males mixed together. That's why the Mishnah said that even a chatos and an Ola, it was referring to this case. But says the Gemara 1 second. Hayi Seir, v'hayi Tzemer. So one of them, the he-goat has hair, but the ram, the he-goat of the 1 second, which offering is that? That's a Ola? No, that's a chatas. Yeah, a chatas. So that chatas, that Nasi's chatos is a he-goat. So he-goat does not have wool; it just has hair. And the Ola offering is going to be the sheep, and therefore it has wool. So that's also easily identifiable. So why did you imply that in this case you could make them graze? It's not true. They're easily identifiable. That's the question.
They may have changed their identity.
Another proof.
Cannot become intermingled with them.
Sorry. Okay, like this. Sorry. Start again. The first difference we thought between an asham and a chatas is male and female. But that the Gemara said, okay, but a chatas and an ola is also, it's going to be male and female. And yet the Mishnah doesn't say that case. That the Gemara says, yeah, but the reason why I chose a chatas and an asham is because Ika Seir Nasi. There's a chatas of a Nasi, which is says there's a chatas of a Nasi, which is male. So if that gets intermingled with an Ola, it would be a problem. And that's the answer. Meaning the reason why if a chatas and Ola gets mixed together, it's a problem because there is a chatas that is a male. Therefore, the Mishnah didn't say except for a chatas and Ola, because there is an example of a chatas and Ola that if they get mixed together, it's going to be a problem. In the case that the chatas is the higot of the nasi, as opposed to the chatas and the asham. Even though they're both males, the chatas and the asham are also both males. If it's a seir of a nasi, but there's still a difference because hayi seir v'hayi tzemer. One has hair, the higot, and one has wool, the ram. So since the chatas and the asham are still going to be different, even in the case that they're both males, they'll never be unidentifiable. There always will be identifiable. That's why we said across the board, chatas and asham will never have the rule of our Mishnah. They're always going to be excluded, even if they're both males, because one's a ram and one's a higot. Okay, good. So now it says Gemara, hold on, but a korban pesach and an asham nami lo ma'arev, a korban pesach and an asham, you also cannot mix them together. They should not be able to be intermingled. And yet the Mishnah didn't mention that. It only mentioned chatas and asham. Everything else sounds like if it's intermingled together, then it would have the rule of our Mishnah. So says the Gemara, the difference is, look, hayi ben shana, hayi ben shtei shanim. The korban pesach has to be less than 1 year old, and the asham has to be less than 2 years old. Isn't that clearly identifiable, and therefore should also be excluded from having to graze in the Mishnah? That the Gemara says, "Ika asham nasir, the ika asham netzora." There are cases of an asham that also have to be within a year. When you finish your nazir's process, when you finish being a netzora, when you finish, so those are also less than a year old, and therefore they would be unidentifiable if they were mixed together with a korban pesach. So, correct, right? Right. So the Ibai Sam, another answer is Ika ben Shana, the next Ika ben Shana, Ika ben Shana, the next Ika ben Shana. Another simpler answer might be is that being a year apart does not make you clearly unidentifiable, right? So even though the asham is going to be less than 2 years old, and the korban pesach is going to be less than 1 year old, but still they could still be exactly. Yeah, that's true. They could be 2 days apart. Even if they're not 2 days apart, it's still not clearly unidentifiable. And therefore, if they get mixed together, they have to graze, and the rule of our Mishnah will apply. So the only exception is what the Mishnah stated: chatas and asham. At the end of chatas and asham, first of all, they're male versus female, and even if not, they're both male, but one has hair and one has wool. Okay, fine. That concludes that. Continuing, asham shenis ari b'shlamim. Now you have an asham that's mixed together with a shlamim. So now, this interesting case, right? An asham is much more strict. Touch a kadashim, you have less time to eat it. You have many more restrictions of where you can eat it, the time frame you have to eat it. Ashlamim, you have more time. You have much more of where you can eat it, who can eat it, and asham is much stricter than ashlamim. So what happens if they get mixed together? So Rabbi Shimon Omer Shneim Yishchadu B'Tzafon V'Yochel K'Chamer Shebehen. Rabbi Shimon says you have to be stringent in every respect. So you have to treat both of these animals in the strictest way, meaning they have to both be slaughtered in the north like an asham would. You have to eat them in the courtyard like an asham would, and presumably who can eat it would also be like an asham. So Amrulo. So the rabbi said back to him, no. Ein mevin kachim lebeis hapsul. You don't basically set up sacrifices to be invalidated, meaning you have 2 offerings. One of them for sure can be eaten in 2 days and 1 night, because one of them is a shlamim. If you make them both strict like an asham, you're risking invalidating one of them if the meat gets left overnight. Because if you only have 1 day to eat it, 1 day and 1 night, and then it's left overnight, it becomes no sar. So the Chachamim say, no, you do not do that. So what do? So you're gonna have to have them graze until they get a wound and then sell them. But you cannot set up an offering that's going to now allow it to be invalid potentially. So if you leave them to graze, there'll be no invalidation. They graze, they get a blemish on their own, and you sell it, fine. If you make them both very strict now, so then what's going to happen? One of them, you might be violating no sar if you leave it overnight. So it's interesting. Sometimes a stringency comes to a potentially, tremendous problem. So that's the Chachamim's response to Reb Shimon. That's the first case. Case 2 is where you are not able to let the animals graze because they are now no longer alive. They're just pieces of meat. What happens if a piece of an asham meat and a piece of shlam meat get mixed together? So what do you do now? You cannot eat them whatever you want because there might be an asham. Asham you can eat outside the courtyard. What do you do? So nesarbu chatikos b'chatikos kachim kadashim b'kachim kalim. What do you do? Or you have kachim kadashim and kachim kalim mixed together. High level of sanctity, lower level of sanctity. So hanechalim liyom echad, the nechalim l'shnei yomim, the laila. You have things that can be eaten in one day or mixed together with things that can be eaten in 2 days. So yochlu kechamer shebehen. You have to eat them in the strictest way possible, meaning you have to only in a certain prescribed area, only to certain prescribed people. You only have 1 day to eat them. And here the rabbis don't argue because here there's no solution. What are you gonna do? Let it graze? That piece of meat can't graze. Yeah. So So here they agree. Here they realize, okay, you're stuck. There's nothing you can do. Then yes, you're gonna have to be strict because to be lenient is gonna be a violation. So okay. Says the Gemara, the Rab. So now we're gonna have a similar example of causing potential problems. So the Tana said in front of Rab, Shvius ein lokhin bidameha truma. So you have Shvius produce, or money from Shvius produce. Let's say Shvius produce. You cannot take Shvius is a Shemitah year, 7th year. So you have fruits from the 7th year that have sanctity, right? Now they're all hefker, right? You can go eat your produce. So you go eat produce, the 7th year produce. Now what happens? You cannot go buy truma with them. Why? You're lessening your time frame to eat it. Meaning, Shemitah has a restriction that you can only eat the Shemitah. The Gemara says is a pasuk. You can only eat the Shemitah produce. Let's say now you're in year 8. Year 7 has passed. Now it's year 8. You can only be eating that type of produce as long as the animals are still eating it in the field. As long as that is growing and animals are eating it, you're allowed to eat that produce in your house. Once it's no longer available in the field, you now cannot eat it anymore in your house. You have to go remove it and you have to get rid of it. So Shemitah there's a cap to it. You can only eat the fruits of Shemitah, vegetables of Shemitah, up until a certain point. Up until that produce is no longer available in the field. Then you can't eat it anymore. Truma, though, no restriction. You can save it, you can bottle it, save it for your kids or grandchild's bar mitzvah, do whatever you want with it. I don't know. So what's going to happen if you now take Shvius and you buy Truma with it? So now the Truma is going to have that sanctity. Now you've lessened its lifespan, and that you cannot do. Yeah. Okay. So Amru Rabbanan Kamei the Rava. The rabbi said this teaching over to Rava, and what happened? They said Hadelo Reb Shimon. This is not like Reb Shimon in our Mishnah, because Reb Shimon allowed you to take 2 animals. One is an asham, one is a shlamim. You don't know which is which, and Reb Shimon says you have to treat them both strictly, even though that might come to leaving it overnight and violating the prohibition of no son. So Rabbi Shimon wasn't worried about this. So to here, he shouldn't be worried about this either. Let you go buy the truma, and we're not worried. Oh no, you might eat it past its required time. Now that you bought it, it has the sanctity of Shemitah, and then what's going to happen when it's no longer available in the field? If Rabbi Shimon is not worried about it in our Mishnah, he shouldn't be worried about it when it comes to Shemitah and Truma either. That was the question posed to Rav. To that he says, so the question is, the Reb Shimon HaOmer may be in touch on the base of Psul. Reb Shimon says you can bring animals into literally the house of blemish, meaning you can put sacrificial offerings in a position that they might eventually come to a prohibition. We're not saying we should violate the prohibition. We're just saying that we're not worried. We have to treat them strictly now. And even though that, yes, you're right, we're now giving you more of a chance if you leave them overnight to violate the prohibition. So what's the easy way out? The easy way out is what can you do ideally and what's post facto? Amr lahu, afilu tamer Reb Shimon, hani mili di'evet, lechatchila lo. Rabbi Shimon said, if you did it, Meaning, if you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't go and do it. You shouldn't go and take two animals and treat them like very stringently. But if it happened already, so then I guess if it happened here means what? If it happened means if they already got mixed together. If it already got mixed together, so yeah, in our case that means what?
But initially not.
So what's after the fact here? They got mixed together, and you already said to treat them like an asham.
Verbal not to expose a sacrificed item to needless invalidation.
Meaning you can't go and mix up these two animals and now treat them stringently. If they already got mixed up, there Rabbi Shimon says we're not worried. But to go do it ideally, that he's not a fan of. So there, it's not a question. Our mission is when they got mixed up already. And this case is talking about to go and buy them. No, you can't go and buy it. If it already got mixed up, so then that's Rabbi Shimon says what he said. Right. But lechatchila lo, is that really true that even ideally you can't go and do this? Abaye is going to bring a question from a Mishnah later on. It says the kulan rishayin kohanim l'shanos ba'achilosim. So all of the animals that a kohanim can eat, they can eat it in whichever way they want. It's going to be a pasuk is going to say that you should be able to eat them like kings eat them, and therefore whatever way you want to eat them, you should not be restricted. You can eat them when they're tzlum, when they're roasted, or when they're shlukim, when they're cooked, or muvushalin. Yeah. Velocity is tochan tavle chulin, tavle truma. You can add to them spices of chulin or spices of truma. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel, some change it to Rabbi Shimon because that's who we're talking about. So that's the question. So what do you see? You can go and take truma and add it to the sacrifice. Now, what are you doing? You're taking truma, which doesn't have a limit. You're adding it to a sacrifice, which you only have 1 or 2 days to eat. So if you never added the truma spices, they can hang out in your closet in your cooking drawer for as long as you want. As soon as you add them to a sacrifice now to eat, well, you only have 1 or 2 days to eat the sacrifice. So you've now taken truma and limited it. And you see, Divrei Rabbi Shimon, they changed it to, he's not worried about that. So you see, even ideally to go and do it, he's not worried about it. So too, ideally to go buy truma with produce from Shemitah, thereby limiting it should not be a problem. And that's not like what Rava said. Rava said that Rabbi Shimon only said his halacha when it was post-facto, but ideally not. But we see not that way. Amar lei, so that the response is hanach letruma. So Amar lei hanach letrumas tavlin d'rabbanan. The truma of spices is rabbinic. It's not biblical. It's not oil or it's not grain. It's only spices. So okay, truma d'rabbanan, he wasn't so strict. But by truma d'oraisa, that you don't have a proof. You don't have a question now. By our case of buying truma with Shemitah produce, which doesn't say any limitations, it could be even biblical. We don't see that Rabbi Shimon argues on that. We just see that by D'Rabbanan. By D'Rabbanan, he's more lenient. But maybe you're right. By biblical cases, he would be more strict. Therefore, it's not a question. So, okay, we'll try again. Esve, ein lokin truma, bekesef meiser. Meiser here means meiser sheni. Now, meiser sheni can only be eaten in Yerushalayim, right? So on years 1, 2, 4, and 5, special, you have to bring your produce or redeem it onto a coin and bring the coin up to Yerushalayim. So that's how you bring your produce. You can only eat it in Yerushalayim. And yet, what does it say? It says, Ein lokin truma bekesef meiser. You cannot buy truma with the money of meiser sheni, because then you're going to be limiting truma to only be eaten in Yerushalayim. You're restricting it. The first opinion says you cannot limit it, and because by limiting it, you're basically setting it up for failure. Now that you limit it only to Yerushalayim, if you eat it outside Yerushalayim, you violated it's a violation. Rabbi Shimon Matir, Rabbi Shimon allowed it. Here you have pretty clear, black on white, that you're allowed to go do something, even though it's going to limit something else, which will then cause a restriction. So meaning you're allowed to go buy truma with Meiser Sheni money, even though the truma before you bought it with Meiser Sheni money had no limit. You could eat it until 120. Doesn't matter. Now that you bought it with Meiser Sheni money, you can only eat it in Yerushalayim. You can't eat it anywhere else. Until you can eat it, on any one of your yachts that you go on your cruises. It doesn't matter. But now you only can have it in Yerushalayim. And yet Rabbi Shimon says, that's fine. You can go do that. So sounds like, so to in our case, there's no reason why you cannot buy truma with produce from the 7th year, even though by doing that you're going to be limiting its consumption. So we see that Rabbi Shimon is not worried about limiting consumption. So ishtikle. So now Rabba was silent. He had no response. Now he's silent. So Ki also lekamede Rav Yosef. Sounds like I think Abaye, who's asking these questions, he came in front of Rav Yosef and he told him this whole back and forth. Rava said Rav Shimon's only post facto. Ideally, he wouldn't let. I asked him all these questions, including the one we just asked, and he was quiet. So now Rav Yosef is going to respond, Amrle, why did you not ask him from the following case? It says in the Mishnayos about Shemitah, Ein mevashlin yerik shel shvius b'shemen shel truma. Interesting. You cannot cook a vegetable of shvius. So you have a vegetable that grew on the 7th year. It has now the holiness, sanctity of Shemitah. Ein mevashlin yerik shel shvius b'shemen shel truma. You can't cook it in oil of truma. Why? Shelo yaviu kachim lebeis apsul. Because if you cook it now with in truma oil, so now the truma is going to be limited. The truma can only be now consumed as long as the shemitah produce can be consumed. Therefore, you're limiting it. Therefore, if you keep consuming it past a certain point, you're going to be violating what the Torah said. So therefore, we just avoid it. Don't mix shvius, which has a limitation, with truma that does not have a limitation. Rabbi Shimon Matir, once again, black on white. Rabbi Shimon is not worried about limiting something with a potential violation. He allows you to do it. So Rabbi Yosef is asking Abaye, why did you not mention this case? What is that? No. Rabbi Yosef asked Abaye.
Oh.
No, I mean, not yet. I'm just summarizing. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sure. Guys, relax. Get a grip. My goodness. A hard crowd over here. As every Shabbos I spoke, you have the same reaction. Well, okay, so Rabbi Yosef, you see, so now it's interesting. I don't know. What do you gain from this question that Abaye didn't ask him? Abaye asked him a case from Meiser Sheni. You can't buy truma with Meiser Sheni because you're limiting it. And in Rabbi Shimon's black on white, you could do it. So Rabbi Yosef saying you should ask him from this case. Again, I'm saying it's a numbers game. What do you gain from this case exactly? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Why is it better? Oil of truma than Meiser Sheni? Not sure. Food for thought. Either way, so Amr le Abaye. Okay, Abaye told Rav Yosef that. He said, "Oh, he answered." He said, "Did I not already ask him from the case of tavlin of spices?" The Amar li, and he told me, "Hanach letrumas tavlin." The Rabbana. And his response to me was, spices of truma is only rabbinic. Hachanami, trumas yerek is the Rabbanan. So the reason why I didn't ask this case, because you want to the case of cooking a vegetable with shemen of truma, with oil of truma, so that vegetable is only going to be truma de Rabbanan. So the same way I already got responded to, the Rabbanan truma were more lenient, so that would have been my response over here. I didn't ask this question because I knew I was gonna get this response. Yeah. Ihachi says Rav Yosef back. If that's true, that this case of cooking your 7th year fruit in truma oil is really rabbinic, so it should have phrased it the other way. Not a vegetable of Shemitah is mixed with oil of truma. It should be Ibcha mi Yerek shel truma. If you wanted to teach me this rule by a case of rabbinical truma, you should have said a vegetable of truma in oil of shvius, because a vegetable is only rabbinic truma, not biblical. The fact that you said a vegetable of shemitah in truma oil is biblical, shows me that you were talking about biblical truma, and therefore the question still stands. You should have asked from this Mishnah. So, yeah. Vilavmi, so he responds, why didn't he do it? Vilavmi osvise mimasnisen dematir Reb Shimon. One second. Vilavmi osvise mimasnisen dematir Reb Shimon. Did we? I know we never. I mean. Oh, meaning didn't we already? Oh, sorry. I think didn't we already ask for our Mishnah? Milav mi osvise. Did we not already ask? We asked the question. Mi masnisen from our Mishnah. Thank you. Dematir Rabbi Shimon. The Amarli the Arif. We already asked from our Mishnah, and what was the response? No, that was already mixed together post facto. So to here, hakanami the Arif. The case here, it's already post facto. It's already mixed together. So once again, I want to prove to Rava that Rabbi Shimon says black on white. You can do it ideally, not post facto. You want to know why I didn't ask for a case where it was mixed with truma oil? Because it was already mixed. And when last time I asked him about a case that was already mixed, like our Mishnah, he responded, that's if it's already mixed. That's not a question. The question is, can you do it lechatchila? Can you do it ideally? Says the Gemara, really, this case is already mixed? Hold on, let's figure this out. If it's already mixed together, why were the rabbis so strict? The rabbis did not allow you to, the rabbis had a restriction over here. What was their restriction? So that the response is, what do you mean? It should be like a Asham and Shlamim, where just like there they were strict, so to here they're strict. So that we say, no, it's a big difference. Midami, you can't compare the two cases. Our Mishnah to the case of the shvius vegetable, the shemitah vegetable in the truma oil. Hasam islay takanta b're'iyah. Over there in our Mishnah, there was a solution. The solution was let the animals graze. But here, here there's no solution. It's a vegetable mixed with oil. What are you supposed to do? Rather, it's more similar to, it's akin to the following. The end of our Mishnah. The end of our Mishnah said, if you have two pieces of meat that are mixed together, there the rabbis agreed they have to be strict, even though it might come to a potential violation. So really, it should be, the same as our Mishnah, and therefore it is the same as our Mishnah. That just like there's no remedy over there, you have to be strict. There's no remedy over here, and therefore we are strict. Fine. That's why Abai didn't ask for this Mishnah, because it was a case of a post facto case, and Abai is trying to ask for a case of ideally, who says that Rabbi Shimon allows it, not post facto. Okay. But hi, is it the kanta b'schita? Hold on, I don't understand. Why were the rabbis strict in the case of the shemitah vegetable mixed with truma oil? And don't tell me it's the same as our end of our Mishnah, where two pieces of meat, one from a guilt offering, one from a peace offering, are mixed together. And what can you do? You have to be stringent. What do you mean? Here there is a way out. What's the way out? Squeeze out the oil. Your shemitah vegetables mixed in truma oil, squeeze out the oil. So there is a way out. So why were they strict? So the Rabbi Yosef, so how are you going to do it? How are you going to squeeze it out? Let's go through the possibilities. So nischo tuva, if you're going to squeeze out a lot of oil, you're going to, by definition, be taking some of the shemitah vegetable with it. And therefore, kamafsid b'shvius. You're going to be losing out. You're going to be taking away sanctity of the vegetable. What's wrong with that? The Torah said on the 7th year you can eat. You're allowed to eat the Shemitah vegetables. The Gemara says, the Rashi explains, eat them, but you can't cause them a loss. You can't just take your Shemitah vegetables and throw them in the garbage. Special in Israel, they have special Shemitah pach, a special Shemitah disposal for the vegetables. And you have to specially dispose them, whatever you do. But you can't put it in a regular garbage. So if you're going to squeeze out all the trum oil, you're going to take away inevitably some of the vegetable. That's not allowed. So what do you want to tell me? Nischot purta. Okay, so squeeze out a bissel, squeeze out a little bit. Okay, but so you're ignorant. Well, then it's still there. There's still some trum oil there, so that's not going to help you either. That's why it's not an option. Fine. Esvei, another question. Rabbi Shimon Omer, lemacharas maybe asham. Okay, so now you have a mitzora. You have a suffix mitzora, meaning there's different stages. It's more in the beginning of. You have different stages of the guy that gets tzaras. I don't like saying leprosy because it's not leprosy, but tzaras. Yeah. So he gets tzaras. So there's different stages. One's called a mitzora muzgar, a mitzora muchla. When you're definitely a mitzora, then you have to go for your 7 days of definite segregation. The 8th day you come and you go through your purification process with application on the finger and the toe and the ear and the whole to-do. Fine. What if you're not sure? You're not sure if you were a definite mitzora or not. So you're coming now on the 8th day. If you are a mitzora, you better get purified. If you're not a mitzora, well, you can't just bring all the stuff that's as an offering. So what's the solution? So the solution is, says Reb Shimon, maybe ashamo belugo ima. Bring your asham offering and your lug, your measurement of oil, and you say like this: V'omer im sham mitzora harei zeh ashamo. If I am a mitzora, so then let this animal count as my guilt offering and my measurement of oil. Turn the page. And if I'm not a mitzora, what should you say? Asham zeh shel shalmei nedava. Let this offering be a shalmei nedava. Let it be a gift offering, just a donation to the temple. Okay. Okay. Now, that asham, if it was a real asham of a mitzora, if it's a real mitzora, so it needs toe and shchita b'tzafon. You got to shecht it in the north. Umatan bahonos. You got to do the applications on the fingers and the toes and the ear. V'smicha, you have to lean on it. Unisachim, and you have to bring libations. V'tnu b'chaz v'shok. You got to wave its chest and its thigh. V'nechal liyom v'layla, and it's eaten for 1 day. But that's only if it's an asham. If it's going to be a voluntary offering, so then it's going to be much more liberal. It has much more leeway and doesn't have all these restrictions. And yet, what do you see? That Rabbi Shimon allows you, lechatchila, ideally, to do this. So even though the offering might not be an asham with all these restrictions, he allows you to do it. He allows you to do it. He's not worried about it. To that, the Gemara says, no. Tikune gavra shayni. When it comes to the purification, it's different. For the suffix mitzora to undo, to purify himself from potential tsaras, that's different than our case. Why is different? We have to see why it's different. But that's different than our case, and therefore you can't bring a proof from there that Rabbi Shimon allows you to do a lechatila. Maybe he only allowed you to do it post facto. One more minute. 56. I guess 2 more lines. What he said, yeah? Oh, okay. So one more. That's good by the asham offering. You can make a stipulation. What do you do with the oil? Lug zez. What do you? Hatenach asham, but lug ma'ikel meimar. You say lug zeh yehein dava. You say let this lug also be a donation. Okay, and then it's going to start a whole to-do. Well, let's go back and forth for a while. Okay, so tomorrow is tomorrow.